sorry, I always switch back to the original match. So you won't remember any of the players necessarily directly,
Not
but
really.
looking at the lineup,
Hmm.
Dean Kiley, who is now actually, funnily enough, Palace's goalkeeping coach, but he was at Charlton for quite a long
Yes, he
time, I
was.
think.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, that period when you started. So he was there for, I think, 7 years, made over 200 appearances. So a bit of a
Did he
legend.
take over
Chris,
from Sasha Illich then?
he must have done because Sasa
Yeah,
Ilic was in that playoff final.
yeah, he was.
So,
Yeah.
yeah. There was a fact about Sasa Ilic I had as well, but it may come
Is it
back
that
to
he's
me.
now managing a wellness retreat somewhere in like Eastern Europe?
That sounds familiar, but I'm sure he did something else in between leaving Charlton and becoming a
Mm,
wellness clinic. Right. Anyway, it could come back to me. I
yeah.
might just check my book whilst we're on this. So yeah, Dean Kiley, Chris Powell,
Yes,
who
Chrissy Powell, who we love,
yeah, you must have
obviously.
loved him because
Adore him. Still do.
great,
But in many
great
ways, I
player.
wish he'd been our manager forever. Like if
Yeah,
we could
because
have had
he
one
got you
other manager.
promoted. Did he not get? He got you
I
promoted,
think
didn't
he
he?
did get us he nearly got us promoted back to the Premier League.
Mm. No, I
He
think
came,
from third tier to second tier, he got you
yeah,
up
but
that
I
way,
think
didn't he?
he also had a pretty good crack at getting us promoted back to the Premier League, which never obviously happened. But
No.
I felt that he deserved more time, but obviously he was involved during that like insane run of like
Yeah.
10 managers in 4 years or something
Yeah.
stupid. But like, I mean, it wasn't actually that, but it was 10 managers, maybe even 11 managers in a very short space of time
Yeah.
during this like ridiculous wilderness. And actually, it was sort of after they got rid of Chris Powell that I kind of there's a great picture of him after like a really crucial match where he's like hanging on to the goal
Hmm.
and he's like pulled himself up like on the goal. And I it was a really rubbish time for the club in general, and it just became too miserable to sort of continue to have much interest in for a while. But
Yeah.
also, I was a bit kind of done with them after they got rid of Chris Powell. So it's just like you know, that's probably the best chance we've had
Hmm.
in a long time. And I would have liked to have seen him stay on a bit longer, but
Yeah.
you know,
I mean, also because he was playing in your first match when you started. I assume you started to go a little bit more regularly and you didn't have to necessarily go
yes,
to the London Eye before each game. So he would have been part of your, early
yeah,
team, and he was there. He had two spells between sort of '98 and 2004, and then came
yeah.
back as a player. And he was PFA chairman for 5 years.
I
So
didn't know. Oh,
he,
did I know that?
nor did
Maybe I
I
did.
until I looked it up. But
Hmm.
that suggests someone who's got sort of understands the game a bit,
Yeah.
in context and perspective. And as you say, he was involved in the England setup up
Yes, he
till
was. Yeah,
last
yeah,
year. And I remember seeing him there and thinking,
yeah.
well,
One of the
of course,
coaches.
he did start at Palace
I
Academy.
didn't know that, but thanks very much. Good to
That's
know.
all right. It's
And I
okay.
think he's been involved in the Spurs setup as well, I think.
Yeah, he's now, I think, Tottenham Academy manager
Yeah.
or something like
I
that.
think he's
Yeah.
great, and
Yeah.
I think he should be. I mean, maybe it's by choice, who knows? But I think he should be managing.
Yeah.
You know, he should be managing big clubs. He doesn't need to be like assistant, whatever. Like blah blah blah. I
Mhm.
think he should really have earned his
Spurs.
stripes by now. Like yeah, and so I think yeah, I've always wondered a bit why he didn't kind of get promoted a bit higher than where
Mm,
he has. But I don't know, he's probably got time to for that to happen if he wants to. Who knows? It may be by choice, as I said.
indeed. So, established himself in your mind. Richard Rufus, we've been through.
Hmm.
I'm not going to go through everyone, don't worry. But Jonathan Fortune was a player who
Yes, remember him? Yeah.
you will remember him. Palace fans do remember him because we got relegated at the Valley in 2005
Mm.
when we were 2-1 up. We only needed to win, and Jonathan Fortune scored with about 5 minutes to go, which made it 2-2. We went down. West Brom had ridiculous recovery. So Jonathan Fortune's name is not one that gives me much pleasure.
You did then
Scott
get us
Parker
relegated, though, didn't you? Didn't
Did
you get
you?
us? Didn't you get us sent down somehow? Weren't you something to do with that?
Well, we had a little while out of the Premier League after that. So,
Oh,
we'd had 4 seasons where we'd lasted for only one season in the Premier League. And then it took us a while to get back. But we've been there for a little while, but we're not going to go into that. Scott Parker was playing.
yeah, Scott Parker.
Must remember him.
Yeah, of course, he was great. We had some very good players
I'm looking
around that
through this
time.
team and I'm thinking, crikey, it's pretty good. Mark Kinsella, who mentioned, is on the front. Paul Konchesky came on as a sub.
Yeah.
And he was on loan from, he was at Liverpool. Graham Stewart, Jason Ewell.
Yeah, Jason Ewell, yeah. Did we have Cole Leaburn then, or had he gone by that point?
No, he's not on. Check on the programme. He wasn't in the lineup, but
he might have gone by then, but he'd been with us for quite a long time. So, of course, his son Miles now plays for Charlton. He's a terrific goal scorer, and his wife Tracy is the player liaison. She's fantastic. Interviewed her for the book. Fantastic woman. So yeah, very integral to the Charlton family.
Indeed. So there is also the manager at the time, who was Alan Curbishley. Yeah. Again, a man, you talk about Chris Powell getting rid of him too early. I think Curbishley was done pretty badly, wasn't he? In that he had kept you in the Premier League for quite a long time, and then he got jettisoned maybe a bit early. Is that your view?
So I interviewed Curbs for the book, spoke to him about what happened, and he said to me, I think he said it publicly previously, but he said that basically he'd gotten to a point where he'd sort of been at the club for 15 years. He'd done very well for us. There was one season where we were pushing, for a spot in Europe. Yeah. I think we finished 8th maybe that season, but certainly like top half of the table, which is, rare for us. Yeah. So we had some great players come through. We had like Paolo Di Canio for a bit, but basically what happened, as he put it to me, was that he had a year left on his contract, and they wanted him to sign for another 3. And he said he knew that he had a year left in him, but he didn't know that he had 3 left in him. So he wanted to see out his contract and then make a decision, at the end of it. And they were a bit like, well, if you're not sort of going to commit because, we want to get new players in, etc., they need to know that there's going to be like a bit of continuity, blah blah blah. Yeah. So if you can't sort of commit to us longer term, then we just think it's best to kind of like do it now, like rip the plaster off, kind of thing. Which is what happened. So I think on one hand you could say like maybe they were a bit unfair to him. On the other hand, it's kind of understandable. In a way, he said that when he went into that meeting, he didn't know that was going to be, he wasn't expecting that to be the outcome. And then he left like very quickly afterwards. It was pretty much like out the door very soon afterwards. So I think I don't know if he feels badly about that. He didn't sort of really allude to feeling badly about it, but I think it was a surprise. And not necessarily the way he would have liked it to go down was the impression that I got from him.
Yeah. So if we go back to this match, I mean, you, as I say, it was very mid-table, this game, so there wasn't anything on it. It was right towards the end of the season in April. Yeah. I think Charlton were...
Although did we not get relegated? No, we got relegated. We'd gone back up, hadn't we? 2002, yeah. We've been relegated and come back up again, yeah.
Yeah, so, you survived this season. And and you won't remember any of the Southampton players, I can guarantee you that. But there were a few that you would recognise. So Wayne Bridge was playing.
Yeah, yeah.
Rory Delap. So you might have actually seen a really long throw because that was his stick, was the huge throw.
Mm-hmm.
But again, probably not something you notice. So going on from that first match, and as you say, that was then you were blooded. You were ready to go. You were Charlton.
Yeah.
Obviously encouraged by your brother now, who was welcoming you with open arms. Did you start to go pretty regularly after that? I mean, as you say, you were living in Essex, is that right?
Yes and no. So we were both at university at the time. Mike was in Kent and I was in Brighton at Sussex Uni. So we did a few trips back and forth, met up. We went to one in 2000 and later on that year, must have been, I think October that year, or was it the year after? I'm not sure. I can't remember now, but basically we saw Arsenal at the Valley, and I think we drew, and Thierry Henry scored, and like I was in love with Thierry Henry, so it was the time of my life, basically. So we went to that one. I think we maybe went and saw. I think when I moved to London after uni, we went a couple of times as well. I ended up working with a guy who supported Charlton and had a season ticket, and occasionally, like, he couldn't go, so he would like let me take him and his dad's season tickets. So we went a few times then, and then it sort of started to peter out a little bit because the times it just started to be horrible, basically. And so there was a period when I didn't go at all and he didn't go at all, and actually he was boycotting the club at the point, as many fans were, at the point at which we got into the next playoff final. And through some spectacular Michael maths, he decided that if I bought the tickets for the final, the playoff final, as a present for him, then technically he wouldn't have broken his boycott because I would have been responsible for it.
It's a very interesting. I thought you were about to say that if you had bought the tickets, then you were going to with some sort of superstitious thing, but it was more.
No, because I'd never seen them win. I'd never seen Charlton win up until that match.
That's quite a stretch, isn't it? So we're talking about now, and it's good that we've moved on to this 2019. So this is 17 years later.
Yeah,
we still haven't seen Charlton win in a live game, which would stretch quite a lot of people's loyalty. But you're sticking with it, which I think is great. Going into that match, and so was that the first time you'd been to Wembley to see a game?
No, it wasn't the first time I'd been to Wembley to see a game, because I'd been to Wembley a couple of years prior to that to my first women's football match, which was the FA Cup final in 2015 between Chelsea and, as we've just Googled before recording this, Notts County. So I'd been to that a few years earlier, which was the first time the Women's FA Cup was held at Wembley. So I'd been to Wembley before. I think I'd been there twice before, because I'd been to a Spurs match there.
When they were...
because I quite liked Spurs at the time. I had like a bit of a soft spot for them because I lived in Dalston for a number of years. So I was kind of like, I referred to myself as a non-partisan North Londoner. So I kind of probably lived equidistance to like White Hart Lane and the Emirates, probably a bit closer to the Emirates. But yeah, so I had a lot of friends who were Spurs fans, so I just had a bit of an affection for them. Loved Poch, who was the manager at the time. And so we went to a match. My best friend's then boyfriend was a big Spurs fan, and he was like, come to a Spurs match with us. So I went, and I think they won like 5-0 or 5-1 or something. And it was a very good match. I enjoyed it. So I'd been there a couple of times, but this is the first time I'd seen Charlton play there, because obviously Charlton don't get too many opportunities to play at Wembley.
Not so many, no.
No.
But so just to give context to this, so Charlton and Sunderland were playing, which they had done back in 1998.
Yes.
Here's another playoff fact for you. It's the only time that two clubs have met in a playoff final. So
wow.
Which is amazing considering the playoffs have been going since 1987. This is the only time that two clubs have actually.
That is amazing because it's quite often the same clubs that are sort of pushing, or like certainly back in the day, it was that way. You had a few clubs that yo-yoed in and out. Maybe that's changed a bit now. I don't know. With the way that the money is going in football, it really just depends if you get bought by someone very rich, doesn't it? But I feel like certainly back in the day, it was kind of like always, the usual suspects.
Yes, that is true. As you say, someone called it the mezzanine clubs, which is a bit more modern than the yo-yo.
Yes,
so, you're just sort of frittering around. You never really established there or there.
Yeah, and Charlton were very much one of those clubs for a period of time. Sadly, those days are no more. I'd love to be a mezzanine club again. Take me back, mezzanine.
What an ambition to be a mezzanine club. So going into the game, as we've discussed before we recorded this, I was there and I go to all the playoff final and I love them. I think they're great fixtures. I think they've just got such tension and there's always a different atmosphere at a playoff final for some reason.
My boyfriend, who supports Manchester United, made a point to me last year that he was like, do you get a trophy for winning the playoff final? I was like, yeah, you do. And he was like, do you get a trophy for finishing second? And I was like, no, I don't think so. And he was like, it's a bit weird to have like a have a third place trophy, isn't it? And I was like, I suppose it is, yeah.
Yeah, it's a good book. Although, excuse me, Ipswich, I'm sure got a trophy because they went up twice.
I know,
which was a great achievement,
and very sad for me.
I'm sure they had of course, your local connections. I'm sure they had a trophy. They claimed they had a trophy. So I've never heard of a runners-up trophy, but I think for the playoffs, because it's such a big event, for your playoff final against Sunderland, I can tell you now there were 76,155 people there. That is a big crowd. This is League One playoff, by the way. It's not going into the Premier League, it's to get into the Championship. So that is a huge thing. And I think because you're at a Wembley showpiece, you'd be a little damp squib, say, okay, Charlton promoted, get back to your training rooms. You need the walk up the steps. And I've seen it many, because I have the fortune to go into the media centre, I can then race across and I can watch the players going up the steps as they go to get the trophy. And it's a lovely thing to see. And it's off camera. It's just a nice thing to see. So I agree. I think you should get a trophy. Your boyfriend supports Man United. What does he know about football?
Was a very good point. Yeah.
I distinctly remember, having been to so many, some of them do sort of merge into one. But this game, I do remember because a couple of my friends are they're Charlton fans. So I sort of felt for them a little bit because the opening was not great in the 5th minute. Talk us through it, Jen, as you remember it.
Yeah, hideous moment. So I've talked about this quite recently. So basically, match starts. I always think like the first sort of 5 minutes of any football match are a bit underwhelming. Like it's sort of a bit of a no one knows what's going on. And I think that very much the case in a match where high tension, high drama, etc. And then in what seemed like a really, really unremarkable pass back to the keeper Dylan Phillips by Naby Sarr. Just totally unremarkable pass back to the keeper. Maybe he's a little bit off target, but not really. I think this is. I'm pretty sure this went down as an own goal by Naby Sarr, not Dylan Phillips. But I think you could probably argue the case that it's Dylan Phillips's fuck up, that is.
Yeah, I absolutely. I think it's a strange thing about own goals because usually it is the last contact, but there are some times where a keeper makes an absolute horlicks of it, and
this
that was
ball.
Dylan Phillips. It wasn't fired at.
It's not fast. If you watch it, and this moment, because I remember watching it happen, like obviously in IRL, as the kids say, watching this happen, and it seems to last a lifetime, right? It seems to go on for like, it's probably like 10 seconds or less than that even, but it's like this moment seems to last for like 90 seconds. And it's just like the ball is travelling, not really at speed, it has to be said, in the direction of Dylan Phillips.
Along the ground.
Yeah, along the ground. It's not a screamer. It's like, it's just a completely unremarkable, mundane ball back to the keeper. And I'm just like, you know, whatever. Like, I'm not even really thinking about this because it's like, he's going to get it. He's going to get it. He's going to get it. And then you get to a point where you're like, I don't think he's going to get that ball. Like it seems to have gone on forever. And then you're just like, I don't think he is going to get it because why hasn't he got it already? This is weird. And it just into the back of the net. And you're just like, this is the worst thing I've ever seen. Like, I don't understand how that's happened. I think, you know, if you wanted to be generous about it, maybe you put it down to nerves, you know. But I think that's Dylan Phillips's error more than it is Naby Sarr's. I don't know how it happened. It was awful, and I was just like, well, that's it. Like, we'd
blown it already.
That's it. Like, we might as well just go home because. And my brother's sitting there, and he's like, oh. You know, because that's going to have like broken his confidence, basically. So now he's done for because he, you know, when he's got the home fans behind him now, when he's down the other end, like that's going to be a nightmare for him. He's really he's done for. But oh ye of little faith.
Mm-hmm. So the thing with Sarr was he'd already been booked in the 3rd minute for taking out one of the Sunderland players who I think he's possibly got the best name of any footballer I've ever heard. His name was Max Power. And I'm not joking. I don't think he'd changed it. He wasn't called Maximilian. I think it was Max Power from day one.
Was he named after like a cold and flu drug?
Well, I haven't interviewed his parents, but possibly. I don't know.
Who does that?
It's crazy. At least they didn't call him Lemsip, which would have been even worse.
They might as well have done, but yeah, okay.
So that was just the 3rd minute. Sarr then scores an own goal in the. He didn't get booked. Power then has to get taken off because he's injured. In the 44th minute, Sarr gets booked for a pretty bad challenge. Guess what happens at half time? He's taken off, substituted. So that's not the greatest half of his life.
But he's a bit like that as a player, I think.
Again, he's a bit like Rufus, isn't he? The own goal.
I think that Naby Sarr is, and I've written about this in my book, Naby Sarr is like the personification of when you play pool in a pub and you've had 2 pints, you're like, I know how to do this now. It's all like you kind of like you've lost your inhibitions a bit. You can kind of like you can see what you need to do. You can naturally go and do it. You don't sort of spend ages like talking yourself out of it, overthinking things. You're just like, great. And you play brilliant pool after 2 pints. After 3 pints, you're trying, but you're making mistakes. And to me, Naby Sarr is the personification of being 3 pints drunk rather than 2 pints drunk. Like, 2 pints, you're living your best life. 3, you've started to tip the balance. That's and I think like so he would do. You know, in that season when I watched them play a lot, he would do some like quite maverick things, and sometimes it would really work. Like he scored quite a lot of goals for a defender. I think Lee Bowyer must have said to him like, just sort of, you know, have a crack if you think. You know, sort of do what you like, mate. But he would do stuff that you'd be a bit like, that is a bit of a gamble.
Yes.
What are you up to? And a lot of the time it would not work, but sometimes it would work, and you'd just be like, "Wow, that's insane."
Yeah. And I do remember him. He was a decent player.
Yeah.
But going back to this match, so you managed to get back into the game just after about half an hour.
Yeah.
With Purrington, another good name.
Yes.
Should have been a cat, shouldn't he? Really.
Yeah.
Set up by Lyle Taylor, who.
Yes.
Look, he didn't go when he left Charlton. It went down very badly wrong, didn't it? Because he refused to play, I think. And anyway, but this is after this game. So back in the game, and I remember sitting in the press box, and it was just about second half wasn't that exciting. Couple of chances, and then sort of getting to the point of we're in for extra time here, and usually that means penalties. So everyone's going, oh God. Chuntering on, saying, "Got to get a train." But I did listen. I checked it out on YouTube just to refresh my memory. But it is very true that as Charlton are attacking right towards the end, at the Charlton where the Charlton supporters are, the commentator literally says, as the ball was going down the left-hand side, only barely seconds left. We've reached the end of the game. We're looking at extra time. Then what happened, Jen?
Well, what I would say is that there's like a few minutes extra time, weren't there? And I remember like my heart sank because I was like, there was enough time for one side to score, but it wasn't.
There's always that one last chance, isn't there?
Yeah, it wasn't realistically, enough time for more than one goal to be scored. So you're thinking like on the balance of probability.
Yeah.
How's this going to go? If we just get like momentarily unlucky, that'll be it. And also, I was a bit like, I don't think I can do another half hour of this. Like it's so tense now. The jeopardy. I don't want to do another half hour of this. So what happens in the 92nd minute? I can't remember who it is, but someone takes a shot at the goal. All of the Charlton players are like up at the Sunderland goal.
Because it's the end of the game.
Exactly,
10 seconds left.
And someone who I can't remember has a shot on goal, and keeper gets it away.
Gets blocked, yeah.
And Pat Bauer gets a deflection. And it's not like, I don't think it's a particularly like pretty goal. It's all a bit scrappy and whatever. And he just taps it over the line. And there are, I think I interviewed Lee Bowyer for the book as well. And I think that he said he went to the lines when he was like, how much time is there left? And he was like 7 seconds or something like that. And he was just like, and that was it. It was it. Like just with like 7 seconds remaining or something like that, Charlton scored the winner.
Yeah.
And it was,
You were there with your brother? So
I was there with my brother, his girlfriend,
you got a Charlton win under your belt, so that was quite nice.
And it was, it was amazing. I cried. My brother cried. Curbs was there on the pitch embracing Lee Bowyer. I had really, really I'm a, Guardian reading, lefty, whatever, blah, blah, blah. I had real, strong feelings about Bowyer coming to the club to take over as manager. I was not in love with the idea at all, because obviously he has something of a checkered past. But what I will say, I interviewed Bowyer, and he surprised me on so many levels. And actually, when I went back through a lot of the stuff that was written about him, I do think that there is an extremely obvious, classist undertone to the way he was written about over the years that I don't think, let's not mess around here. There are other players in the Premier League who are accused of quite heinous crimes, actually, and they do not get written about in the way that he was written about, and certainly not for 15 years. Do you know what I mean? Like it's certainly not about something they did when they were 18 or whatever. Like, you know, that they're then like 45 and still being asked about it. So I do think that while I do not in any way condone any of, because it wasn't just one, there were more than one misdemeanors. So whilst I don't like condone or apologize for like any of the things that Bowyer was accused of, I do think I wouldn't want to be judged forever on the things that I did when I was 18. And I also think that, yeah, when I spoke to him, he surprised me a lot, I have to say. So with that in mind, so what he did at the club, actually, after what was a really, really horrible time for the club, he brought everyone back together again, I think. I think he absolutely has to take credit for what happened that season, the momentum that got behind us, and the way and the hopefulness that we all had about what might happen at Charlton afterwards. But, you know, Bowyer was just one part of the machine, and unfortunately things did not go that way. But yeah, going back to that match, it was incredible. It was wonderful. Like, just, you know, as I've said previously, with the exception of giving birth to my daughter and the moment that she was placed in my arms, and about, you know, 3 hours prior to that, the the epidural I was given. This was like the most euphoric moment of my life, with those two other things, you know, with those two exceptions. It was incredible. It's just like I'd never seen Charlton win before, so this is a nice way to start that tradition. I can't say I've seen them win too many times since then, but yeah, it was fantastic. And then what happened was we'd had a group of extremely pissed up dudes sitting behind us for the whole match, who really were like just the kind of like the sort of like stereotype of a bad football fan, who'd been like, you know, nudging us the whole way through because they're too pissed to sort of like keep themselves physically in check. Like, they were, you know, it just absolutely just gross individuals, basically. And then what happened was, in their excitement, two of them came over the back of it and landed on top of me. And I literally have scars for life on my shins from when basically what had happened was they'd come down and I'd almost gone over the row in front, so I'd sort of gone like bang against the seats in front, and then my brother had put his arm out and sort of dragged me back. But then what had happened was we'd literally all landed in a heap on the floor. So that was not a nice way to finish the day. And then I had to go and do a 10K charity run the next day with these like bruises down my legs that hurt every time I moved. So yeah.
Yes. But I suppose you could say you've got the scars to show it. So, you know,
exactly,
it's a happy memory.
So it's a good anecdote. So, you know, I've dined out on that one now a few times. So, yeah.
Sure you have. So, again, it's been a fantastic journey, because we started off way back in 2002, and you went via the London Eye to the Valley. And this, 17 years later, you get to see Charlton win for the first time at one of the most pressurised games you can play in a playoff final. And it's almost, it's got a sort of sense of rough justice that you should end up getting pushed over by fellow Charlton fans and ending up with this goal. So it started with a kick and it ended with a shin scar, let's call it that.
Yes.
So what a fantastic journey. I've really enjoyed it. Is there anything in that journey where you said, okay, I'm almost out? So you mentioned your brother. You said when it got really silly in terms of ownership and it was all going horribly wrong, he said, that's it, I boycotted it. Did you ever think at any stage you go, I tell you what, I've got better things to do than worry about what's going on at Charlton.
Oh yeah, I mean there was a period of
Yeah.
about 5 years where I was just like, I can't be bothered with this. This is silly. I think I was spoilt a little bit by the fact that when I came to Charlton,
Yes.
they were doing quite well, and then obviously since then it has just been misery upon misery upon misery. And there was a period where I was like, this is too miserable. I don't want to do it. And then Bowyer really is responsible for the point at which I come back to the club because he's made it feel like something that's nice and there might be a bit of hope. And, so yeah, so who would have thought that Lee Bowyer would be the person to bring me back to Charlton? But that's what happened. So, I think. There absolutely was, and I have to say, like recently, there has been a bit of like, oh God, this is never going to get better, like this is just never going to get. We're just perpetually going to be owned by awful people who make terrible decisions, who don't have our best interests at heart. I don't even really know who our owner is now. I think it's a like conglomeration of about 500 people who all own like 1p's worth of the club or something like that. So it's not like it's not a situation where like we're well funded, so we can go into something being like, great, we've got a bit of money behind us, let's do an Ipswich or let's do a Luton or let's do a Sunday, whatever. That's not on the cards anytime soon. So then you do start to wonder, well, where does it go for us now? Obviously we've got a newish manager now, Nathan Jones, who,
as of the Supreme song. You know the Supreme song, Nathan Jones? Nathan Jones, you've been gone too long. Anyway, sorry.
No, I don't know that. That's great. Okay. The Supreme song, it's not called Nathan Jones. Anyway, so we had a terrible start to the season, and then he sort of joined, I would say, like towards the end of the last season, maybe around the middle. And we had a very good end to the season because at one point it looked like we were going to get relegated from League One, which would be, disastrous, I think. I'm not sure there'd be any coming back from that. So he managed to avoid it, but we went on a really decent run towards the end. I think we did like maybe, I might be talking out of my arse here, but maybe like even 10 games unbeaten towards the end. Like we had a good old run. And obviously he's the guy who got Luton promoted to the Championship.
That's right.
I believe he's a slightly controversial figure in that some people think that his methods are a bit wacky, but I don't care. If it works, it works. I'm in, like, got to give it a shot. So I'd like to see us make a few signings over the summer, although I'm very, very realistic, pessimistic even about what can actually be achieved by a team with a budget that is going to be on the smaller side. But what I would say is we have a decent academy. We always have good players coming through. Obviously, South East London is now considered like, bit of a sort of factory for young footballing talent. So Charlton's always had a very good academy, very strong academy, had some very strong players coming through. So we do kind of like rely on that a little bit, which is no bad thing. Obviously, we never get to keep any of them because when they're good, they get bought by bigger clubs. Ademola Lookman, look at him. Wow, he's having a great time at the moment. He's Charlton Athletic. So we like to take ownership of him. But anyway, like, I think I'm daring, although with the caveat that it is the hope that kills you, she says, as we go into a general election. But like, I'm daring to hope that in football and indeed the world, there might be some better times ahead.
Well, I think that's a very good point at which to end, because I like optimism. And I think if the general election doesn't go the way that most of us expect, are hoping I might leave the country, because that'll be it for me.
You can't, because we're not allowed to anymore, because we don't have the visas. So
I'll just hang around on a boat and just get shouted at by Nigel Farage or something.
Yeah.
So, but as I say, what really loved that all the way through, and the fact that it started with a kick and then it ended with a flip over Wembley seats, I think is just a beautiful synchronicity to that. So thank you so much for your time, Jen. And if you want to listen to Standard Issue, it's out there on every podcast platform available.
Wherever you get your podcasts from, you can find us. Yeah,
even this one. I mean, you could do a joint one possibly, and then your book, The Year of the Robin, I assume is lots of copies, not just at the Charlton Athletic Museum.
Yeah, no, you can buy it from Waterstones, Amazon, all good bookshops. Not the independent bookshop in Chiswick, where he said to me, well, I tried to explain to him what the book was about, and said it's a bit sort of, it's not really just about Charlton. It's a bit kind of like fever pitchy kind of thing. And he said, are you comparing yourself to one of the greatest books ever of the genre? And I went, no, and scuttled out, shamefaced. Whereas I wish I'd said, yeah, I am actually, piss off, and left. But yeah. So even if you don't support Charlton Athletic, I think there's a lot in there to relate to as a football fan in general, or just someone who's interested in like football and modern Britain in general.
Okay, well, that's good enough for me. I'll put it on my birthday list. By the way, it's my birthday next week, so family, watch out. You need to get this book for me. But as I say, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you very much for your time, Jen. Thanks.
Thank you so much.